Ladies and gentlemen, the 2021 through 22 NBA season is officially here. A couple days ago, I went through my Western Conference standings predictions alongside the legendary Alvini Linguini, so be sure to check out that video after this one. But now, it's time to focus on the East, and for this video's feature, I've brought along Ask the Truth, who ever so graciously ended his 52-year hiatus from uploading to finally give some of y'all that classic truth content. He'll be hopping in a little later in today's video, so again, thank you to him, and with that, let's hop into these rankings. At number 15, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers. Colin Sexton will probably have a very big year this year, but I've always seen him as one of those classic empty stat getters who could never actually produce all-star-esque numbers on a winning team. I feel like Cleveland is gonna play completely lifeless basketball this year, and honestly, what else can you expect from a team whose veteran leader is Kevin Love, a man who hasn't actually tried in a game of basketball ever since LeBron left Cleveland? At number 14, I have the Orlando Magic. Orlando is in the earliest stages of a rebuild that is starting out strong, with a plethora of young talent to experiment with in the rotation to help them figure out which ones out of their youngsters are busts and which ones are actually going to be a part of their future. Listen, I can't tell you whether Jalen Suggs, Markelle Fultz, or Cole Anthony should be running the show for this team long term, nor can I tell you if Orlando should commit to Wendell Carter Jr. or Mo Bamba, but by the end of this year, we will have clear answers to these questions. It might be a painful season for Magic fans, but it's a necessary step. This team is going in the right direction, and it might be kind of exciting this year watching every player play their hearts out, because essentially every single game is going to be treated as if it's a tryout. At number 13, I have the Washington Wizards. Washington traded away Russell Westbrook to the Lakers, and instead of getting a second star in return, they instead got a random assortment of semi-decent role players that will ensure that this team won't suck, but definitely won't be good either. Washington is the worst of the Eastern Conference teams that I would say are currently stuck in no man's land, and that is a place nobody wants to be. At number 12, I have the Detroit Pistons. People now seem to be hyped over Detroit's future after they acquired the first overall pick in Cade Cunningham, who was indeed pretty disappointing in the preseason, but quite frankly, he deserves to be given more time. I see Jeremy Grant as a pretty weak first option, and I simply don't believe he is good enough to lead a team into the playoffs, or let alone even lead a team to competing for a playoff spot. Outside of randomly lucking out on the first pick, this front office still hasn't proven to me that they aren't the same old incompetent front office that they've been for over a decade. This team is a work in progress, with some future and a somewhat promising young core, but for the most part, I really don't get the hype. At number 11, I have the Toronto Raptors. I really like what Toronto has done ever since they lost both Kawhi and Kyle Lowry, which is one of the toughest situations to be in as a franchise. With the likes of Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, and Chris Boucher, this team has a ton of freak athletes on their roster, all of which are going to blossom into at least borderline all-stars, but their potential, especially the last two, are way higher. This team has built a very interesting framework, but unfortunately, they just can't move on from Fred VanVleet. Fred VanVleet goes against everything both Toronto and Masai Ujiri stand for. He's a stocky, overconfident point guard who will only stagnate the offense, deny opportunities from their young core, and chuck up ill-advised threes. If the Raptors ever end up being good anytime soon, it will be in spite of Fred VanVleet's presence, not because of it. Don't get fooled by some flashy highlights or a singular game winner. At number 10, I have the Charlotte Hornets. LaMelo Ball is only going to get better this year, and I see him making his all-star debut this season. While this team should focus on building around the likes of LaMelo, Miles Bridges, and PJ Washington, they for some reason seem committed to signing more and more arrogant, one-dimensional, inefficient volume scorers like Terry Rozier and Kelly Oubre, who only distract this team from winning. Plus, at this point, I just can't trust Gordon Hayward to be healthy. Now, if he can play 70 plus games, maybe the Hornets make the playoffs, but I just don't see that happening. At number 9, I have the Indiana Pacers. Miles Turner is the perfect starting center for any contending team that doesn't happen to have a star big man, but instead, his career is being wasted by this unambitious organization that will never, and I mean never, go anywhere. The poor guy has lost in the first round 5 consecutive times, and if you think that Domantas Sabonis' slow ass is gonna lead this team to anything of note, dream on. At number 8, I have the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls are the perfect team for casual fans to overhype, since they can easily just rattle off all the star names that this roster features. But last season, the addition of Nikola Vucevic led to this team not improving at all. And let's be real, Lonzo Ball has always been insanely overhyped. The dude still gets Jason Kidd comparisons even after averaging only 5 assists on a team with one of this generation's most dominant scorers. You have got to be kidding me. On a more positive note, this year will also be the one that Zach LaVine will start to get widely recognized as a superstar. The only difference between him and the likes of Devin Booker, Trae Young, and other young stars has been the fact that he simply can't win. But now, the wait is over, and LaVine will go down as a consensus top 18 player. At number 7, I have my New York Knicks. Now, I originally had Chicago taking this spot, but I'm currently writing this script mere minutes after watching Julius Randle knock down a game-winning, buzzer-beating jump shot over the Wizards to officially give the Knicks a 4-0 preseason record. So, you know what? While I'm all hyped, I'm just gonna say it. This is the best team in the world. And while I only half mean that, I do genuinely mean that I wouldn't want to be a fan of any other team right now. The Knicks are a franchise that understands the difference between signing big names and actually building a team. Both this team and their fans alike treated each and every preseason moment as if it was Game 7 of the NBA Finals, and quite frankly, I can't find any other NBA team that 1. Works so well together as a cohesive unit, and 2. Is willing to put everything on the line for each and every game. Both Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier have fit in seamlessly with this roster. Derrick Rose and Nerlens Noel are almost inarguably the best backup players at their respective positions. Everybody on this team adores Coach Tom Thibodeau, and the development I've seen from alleged NBA bust Obi Toppin has simply been unbelievable. This preseason, he's played with a sense of urgency that made it clear to everyone that he recognizes that his NBA career could be on the line soon. A realization that I have never seen the likes of Kevin Knox, Dennis Smith Jr., or any other Knicks busts in the past make. Plus, he never fails to shock me with his athleticism each and every game. Now, of course, I did have to put this team as only the 7th seed for a reason. Kemba, Derrick Rose, and Emmanuel Quickley all can't guard a doorknob if their life depended on it. So whenever any great point guard will stroll into the Garden this year, we're gonna be screwed. And especially in this modern era, almost every team has a really good scoring point guard. Mitchell Robinson came back all buff this year, and I was actually really hyped about it. Knicks fans gave him the nickname Flex, but then he could barely move or even dunk when the preseason rolled around. Obviously, he'll get more comfortable as the season goes on, but to all my Knicks fans out there, I think it's time to officially put the Rudy Gobert comparisons to rest. Maybe this guy is just a very good role player. I hate to say it, but it's true. At number 6, I have the Boston Celtics, and for this one, it just wouldn't have been right for my ignorant ass to sit here and half-assedly rattle off some basic information about one of the most cared about teams in the NBA. And so, instead of doing that, I decided to hit up a man that I knew would give this team the concise breakdown they deserve. And with that, I'm gonna pass the mic off to the one and only Ask the Truth.
Hello everyone, my name is Ask the Truth, and if you don't know who I am, I make videos about the NBA on YouTube.com. You know, when I actually upload. So today my good friend KOGOSTOMUS has asked me to do a quick preview of the Boston Celtics for this upcoming season. As a Celtics fan, I have a pretty good overview of this. So firstly, I want to cover the changes that the Celtics have made that differentiates this year's team from last year's. The first and biggest thing to note is that general manager Danny Ainge stepped down from his position and now former head coach Brad Stevens has taken his place. Truth be told, it had been a long time coming, especially when you consider that in recent years, Ainge really hasn't made the best decisions, which led to a poorly constructed roster with little to no depth. However, ever since Stevens has taken his place, all his moves can be described as the best thing you could really ask for in terms of constructing a win-now roster, and having the foresight to make future moves. So to go over those very briefly, he managed to get off of Kemba Walker's contract while also bringing back Al Horford, whose game has managed to age like a fine wine. He used the rest of the Hayward TPE to bring in Josh Richardson. He's also extended our Lord and Savior Marcus Smart as well as Robert Williams to very team-friendly deals. He's also brought in guys like Juancho Hernan-Gomez and Dennis Schroeder, who, keep in mind, is only on for the MLE, which is an absolute steal. And to replace his job at the head coach, he's hired Ime Udoka. Now, if you don't know much about him, here's his resume. So he was an assistant coach with the San Antonio Spurs for 7 years under the greatest head coach of all time, and had 1 year stints with the Sixers and the Nets as an assistant coach. And then he was also an assistant coach for Team USA, which is where him, Smart, Tatum, and Brown really got acquainted. And from my personal perspective, as well as the perspective of many other people, he really is the perfect choice to take the head coach position. Now, as for how they'll do during this upcoming season, it's really difficult to tell. Brad Stevens' run teams have always managed to do very well despite what's on the roster when they're healthy. And that's what it really boils down to. Last season, yes, of course, it wasn't that well constructed of a roster, but you also have to consider that the Celtics missed the most games due to COVID out of anyone in the league. Tatum had to use an inhaler before games, Marcus Smart was this close to tearing his Achilles, and Jaylen Brown tore a ligament in his hand. I do not trust this team to be healthy or make it to games. And looking at the recent injury report, yeah, it's a massive concern. On the positive side, there is definitely a lot to look forward to. Of course, there's the continuous development of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Tatum, if I'm not mistaken, had the most 50-point games out of any player in the league last year, and at this point, he's not even considered to be a dark horse candidate for MVP, as opposed to just literally being a candidate for MVP. Jaylen Brown, I'm not even going to try to predict what his ceiling is, because that's damn near impossible. Peyton Pritchard, Aaron Nesmith, Robert Williams, Romeo Langford, especially Romeo Langford finally being healthy, are also massive upsides to their young core. Now, under the stipulation that this team can stay healthy for at least the most part, then I can easily see them making it back to the Eastern Conference Finals for the 4th time in 6 seasons.
Thank you again to Alum for that beautiful contribution to today's video. His channel will be in the description below. I would say that he makes some of the most immaculate, well thought out content on NBA YouTube, but that would imply that he makes content at all. So I'll just say for now, subscribe to his channel for immaculate, well thought out videos about once every solar eclipse. At number 5, I have the Philadelphia 76ers. So I guess Ben Simmons is now back with the team, but not really. It's clear that he's only coming back to secure his paycheck and is completely half-assing things in practice, according to reports. We were clowning on this guy when he was trying, so this year is gonna be brutal for him and the Sixers. Of course, outside of the cancer that is Ben Simmons, this team is built to win and have done so with with pretty much the same core that they have now for years on end, so they won't be awful. But a guy like Ben Simmons really has the ability to bring this entire team down with him. If we're being real with ourselves, this team should be a 3rd seed, 2nd seed, maybe even the number 1 seed in the East. But if we are to assume that Ben Simmons will stay on this team for the remainder of the season, then I really see him limiting their potential. At number 4, I have the Brooklyn Nets. I know, very controversial, but if I'm being honest here, I don't even mean this ranking to be an insult. The Nets are the best team in the NBA and will probably win the NBA championship, but that doesn't mean that they're the team that's best suited to win a bunch of regular season games. Kyrie Irving's passion for the game is completely gone, and Kevin Durant has made it clear to everyone that he has nothing else to prove in his career, and he's right about that. James Harden is the only one out of the trio that is still ringless, but he's a pretty calm and cool player that doesn't strike me as the type of guy to play with a sense of urgency and passion all season long. Can you really imagine the Nets going hardcore in a random November game against the Pacers? Come on now, I know you love this team, but be real with yourself. It's gonna be stupid, meaningless games like this that will screw up Brooklyn's place in the standings, although it probably won't even matter by the time the playoffs come. This big 3 is gonna load manage, probably suffer some small, stupid injuries, and will just cruise through this regular season all calm and cool. That's the culture this team has built. At number 3, I have the Miami Heat. People are really obsessed with bashing on this team's somewhat mediocre Big 3, but let's not forget that this team is so much more than their 3 potential All-Stars, which is impressive enough. I expect Tyler Hero to turn this Big 3 into a Big 4 this season with his exceptional play off the bench, and this team also has PJ Tucker, Duncan Robinson, Victor Oladipo, who will be their wild card, and Markieff Morris. We all know that Jimmy Butler won't ever let this team take any games off, and depth is usually the secret key to winning a lot of regular season games, because if you're not relying on one singular player game in and game out, it really increases your chances of competing each and every game. And just because I understand that this ranking and the one before was very, very controversial, I would like to note that I see the 3rd through 6th seeds as all practically interchangeable. All of their records will be very, very close to one another. So if you have Miami, Boston, Philly, or Brooklyn a little bit lower or a little bit higher on your personal list, listen, I can respect it. You'll notice that I gave all of these teams practically the same records. At number 2, I have the Atlanta Hawks. Atlanta just strikes me as one of those teams that isn't ever gonna get close to winning a championship, but will always be able to rack up a ton of wins. Trae Young is a master at setting up his bigs near the rim, and who better to lob it up to than John Collins and Clint Capella. In last year's playoffs, Trae proved himself to be too crafty to be contained by anyone, and now that he's accompanied with a proper coach and a healthy roster, unlike last year, this team is going far. I'd also like to shout out DeAndre Hunter, who is this team's secret gem. I would compare him a lot to RJ Barrett, but he just never seems to get the recognition he deserves. And Hunter is just one of the countless players on this team that makes them one of the scariest and deepest teams in the league. At number 1, I have the Milwaukee Bucks. Usually I would be hesitant to give this number 1 honor to a team like the Bucks, since reigning champions historically have trouble transitioning back into regular season mode after enjoying the high of being a champion for months on end. But I simply can't see this happening with a team led by someone as driven as Giannis Antetokounmpo. Earlier in this video, I called the New York Knicks the most passionate passionate and hardest working team out there. But Giannis almost single-handedly gives the Knicks a run for their money in that department. This year, Giannis's three-point jumper has looked pretty smooth, and that was always the one missing gem in his Infinity Gauntlet. Now that he has it, the league better watch out. Chris Middleton is an extremely underrated second option that should be a consensus all-star both this season and for the next couple seasons to come. And this core has barely changed since they won a championship, which has to be a good sign since this is the core that won a ring. This team has a significantly better culture than the Nets, and I can definitely see them repeating as champs. And so, here it is, my final prediction for what the entirety of the Eastern Conference standings will look like this year. Go ahead and get a good look at it, remember it, and let's see just how accurate this ends up being by the end of the season. I've gone through this same exact process with the Western Conference as well, so if you want to go see what I think about teams like the Lakers, Warriors, and many others, myself and the great Alvini Linguini made our Western Conference standings predictions a couple days ago, and that video should currently be flashing up on your screen as we speak. Thank you again to Ask the Truth for hopping onto this video. Please don't forget to check out his channel. He'll be linked in the description below, as well as in the pinned comment. And with that, as always, stay safe out there. Whoa! 2 long ass videos back to back, man. Holy shit.